Welcome to SmartTalk Radio. This is Chris Zafoid-Karabatz bringing you episode 6 with Jonathan Hales from BitBacker IO. BitBacker is a platform that's looking to replace more or less Patreon in the crypto space, and their timing couldn't be better with the issues we're seeing with Patreon and censorship these days. So Jonathan talks about BitBacker, SmartCash a bit, and what he is doing in this space. So we hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, it's Chris Zafoid-Karabatz with SmartTalk Radio here, and we're here with Jonathan Hales of BitBacker. BitBacker is a platform that's can best be summed up as like Patreon, but only for crypto. So we're big fans of it here at Smart Talk Radio, and I'm going to let Jonathan introduce himself now.
Hi, Chris. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show. And nowhere else to add. We've been running BitBacker now for coming up to maybe a couple of months, and we've had just steady user growth, and SmartCash has been a big part of that.
Yeah, that's great. We love BitBacker for what it's doing, and it's very timely right now, too, with what's going on with Patreon and their deplatforming of some people. And it's a perfect use case for crypto in general with our concept of trustlessness and lack of intermediaries for your transactions. Do you want to go a bit into what prompted you to start BitBacker? Like a little bit on who you are, what your background is, and how you ended up starting this free market cryptocurrency competition, and how this ended up being such perfect timing for you.
Yeah, so just a brief history of me. I got into Bitcoin around 2012 when I was in grad school. My roommate/colleague introduced it to me, and I've been in it, in and out. I've taken a few brief breaks here or there, but I've always been keeping an eye on it. After grad school, I was a quantitative trader for a little while, and then I left, and now I'm here at BitBacker. Started BitBacker primarily just before the Patreon thing really started. There were a few murmurs of the deplatforming things going on with Twitter and YouTube and all these things, but it was primarily just because I thought that the crypto world deserved their own version of Patreon. There's a lot of podcasters, a lot of content creators, and I thought it was kind of a little embarrassing that we had to use this legacy financial system of Patreon, even if it's a great idea. And so I started working on it, and then about a week or two after we launched, you had this whole Patreon exodus hit. So it was really just very lucky timing, and we've been trying to capitalize on that as much as possible.
Yeah, I love how so many things in life, like you can have the perfect product, but if you have it at the wrong time, it doesn't really mean anything. And It seems like you just started at just the right time. I love it. I love how providential that seems at times. With BitBacker itself, like it seems to be a pretty rough platform right now, very basic, but it gets the job done. How many people do you have there working on it?
It's just me for now. We're looking to expand as much as possible, but still very early stage.
Well, it's great what you've done just by yourself there, because we are collecting a lot of people in the crypto space and the freedom-oriented space who are coming in there. And we all know that the Patreon fiasco isn't done with yet, so you are definitely in the right spot there.
Yeah, it's incredible with Patreon is they seem to actually be doubling down a lot. I don't fully understand why they're doing what they're doing, but I welcome the opportunity.
Yeah, I was just talking with an associate of mine the other day. He sent me a video of a creator who is a relatively big creator on Patreon who had actually talked to some of the higher ups at Patreon and basically was shocked that exactly what you said. They were doubling down. They were not layering out clear standards for what would get people deplatformed. At one point she told him that if you are worried about something violating our standards that she admits aren't clear, that maybe you just run it by her before you post it. And what could possibly be wrong with that? The whole concept of everybody living in a bubble really has seemed to catch on here. It's like just hearing his conversation with her, rather his retelling of his conversation, just shows how much in a bubble these Silicon Valley tech people are.
Yeah.
And I know that we talk about, us being in a crypto bubble here, not in a financial sense, but we just talk to other crypto people. But, at least then we can recognize when other people are also seem to be in a bubble, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe there is also a market need or a niche of people who really want a heavily moderated ecosystem for which to produce art, and that's fantastic. But I also think that there's a huge market for people who would prefer to have more of an open marketplace of ideas, which we're looking to provide with BitBacker. Another thing about BitBacker is because we're using crypto and not these legacy payment processors, we're able to really try to push the fees down a lot. We aim for close to 1% per transaction versus Patreon, which is around 10% per transaction. And of
Yeah.
that 10%, half of it is for payment processors, just because it's very expensive to shuffle fiat around. And I also found, just reading an article about this, is that apparently 10% of Patreon's workforce is used for moderating content. And so they also have this incredibly moderating of content, even, so first of all, we disagree with it on kind of ideological grounds, but it's also just in terms of dollars and cents, very expensive to do.
I had no idea they were spending that much on moderation. Like, why? And we've all seen videos where a lot of the very popular Patreon creators are doing things that by their stated standards should get them banned from the platform. So I'm not really sure what the moderators are doing other than, to be a little bit political here, making sure that wrongthink doesn't end up on the platform.
Yeah, it's sometimes very hard not to see it that way. Yeah.
And that's simply amazing, and it's great. And one of the other things is that BitBacker also isn't just like Patreon, where it's monthly support. You also have a power chat feature built in that's meant to target the live stream content. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's certain advantages and disadvantages to crypto, and so even though we're highly inspired by Patreon, and it's a great idea that they had, even if they've deformed it a little bit. When we see an opportunity that works, we're also going to branch out and try to embrace that. So originally, the basic idea was just to kind of create a wrapper around YouTube videos or Twitch streams so that people could send basically a super chat type function to the creators as the live stream happened. Basically, you just write them a message, you fill in how much money you want to send, and you post it. And it was quite popular. In fact, I think it probably rivals, if not even surpasses, the amount of money that's been raised by pledges for a lot of creators. And so we then decided to integrate that into the actual timeline of the users. So there's a slightly asymmetric nature now about the site where you can post whatever you want on your timeline, but no one can post anything on your timeline unless it's a power chat. So it's a way of kind of showing support and kind of getting visibility for big supporters of creators.
Yeah, that's really great. And one of the things I remember hearing about Google is it's something like 30% of the super chats go to Google rather than creators. Is that what you have for your numbers?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a great point. I should have mentioned that probably to begin with is, so if you thought 10% was bad for Patreon, with Google or these YouTube subscriptions, they're taking 30% off the top. And it's just, it's crazy, honestly. And, you hear sometimes people saying, "Oh, well, crypto is very volatile, and so we're a little bit nervous about taking it." But if you're starting off 30% in the hole, just have a little bit of stability. It seems a little crazy to me. You have a lot of leeway to work with, and besides the fact crypto has been very upwardsly volatile historically as well. So, in terms of just financial sense, it's really difficult to kind of convince yourself to go with this 30% YouTube way. But I think that's a really strong selling point.
Absolutely, because the creators who are doing this aren't typically in the they're typically counting their pennies. So 30% means a lot to them.
Yeah.
And certainly if you're giving them money, you really want to give them money, not Google or Patreon or Visa or MasterCard money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's excellent that crypto can, we've always talked about crypto being the way that peer-to-peer transfer. And that's what you're really working at here, is creating an easy platform that really is peer-to-peer transfer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think maybe we've kind of forgotten about in this recent, huge ICO boom and kind of the China bubble, whatever you want, whatever the name for it is a lot of the beginnings of Bitcoin just started off with basically the notion of uncensorable money, or trying to support people or speech that may not be the party line. Particularly, the original kind of big publicity run up for Bitcoin was with WikiLeaks when they started to adopt Bitcoin. And so in many ways, we're kind of trying to get back to the roots of Bitcoin with BitBacker. And, we're trying to provide kind of this, one of the things I've always thought about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general is it's always been lacking kind of a very user-friendly interface. And BitBacker is hoping to be just kind of this thin layer on top of the Bitcoin transactions to make it very friendly and very usable to people. We'd really like to be the first platform for a lot of content creators who have been curious about Bitcoin and have been starting to think more and more about it. We want to be the first place they go and experience it and start to actually earn crypto.
And that's really important right now, as we're going more and more into this realm of censorship. And we just heard last week that Coinbase kicked off the founder of Gab off of their platform, and they'd already kicked Gab off months ago. And
that's very surprising to me, honestly, but I guess to other people were expecting it, but wow, that's incredible.
It is, because we just, as we talk more and more about what you said, peer-to-peer cash, we just had this proof of keys thing. We just had all this stuff where we really are trying to get back to what crypto is all about, where you are in control of your money and you can send it to somebody else and nobody else has to be involved with that process. Now, I know that BitBacker does sit in between a little bit, but not as a censorship, just as a transport method to make things easier for both parties.
That's right, yeah. And we're totally non-custodial in the sense that we never own any of your funds. And so as soon as you send your money to your content creator, we process it all in browser, and we skim off our 1% and send the 99% to the creator. And it happens immediately, which is fantastic because, it was kind of maybe a more technical point, but it was an important point for me because it protects the site security-wise. So we're not really a target for hackers like Mt. Gox or something. And also, as a user or a content creator, you get your money right away. You don't have to be worried about us shutting down your account and freezing your funds, because it's yours right away. We never control
them. That actually is an excellent point, because there have been various reports of creators at Patreon where the pledgers continue sending their money and Patreon was not sending that money on to the creators, which I think is just very low. I mean, that's completely opposite of how you should do. You have all this money to moderate your system. You should be able to handle those situations better and more honestly than that. And
absolutely.
That's in my book, that's near fraud.
Yeah, you could say that.
And one thing I wanted to go back on a little bit was we talked about WikiLeaks accepting Bitcoin. Now, I've not really talked much about that. Can you describe why WikiLeaks started doing that all those years ago?
It's a very similar issue that we were facing right now. Basically, the U.S. government was not a fan, and so they put pressure on various payment processors to cut off all donations to WikiLeaks. And so no official donation spots could donate to them. And they were cash starved. And this is where Bitcoin stepped in, and they put up a Bitcoin address. And I think by the end of it, including, I don't know the exact value of when it was, but by the end of the whole thing, I think they had accumulated a fortune of like $25 million in Bitcoin. So, I think Julian Assange actually made this tweet thanking the U.S. government for blocking down the payment processors, because it made them a small fortune, and probably was able to support WikiLeaks. Probably even now to this day, they probably still have some.
Yeah, that I think that dates back to just before the China bubble, and a lot of people tie that in with the China bubble for the reason for the $24 2014 bubble. And yeah, he did. He made a tweet saying, thank you Visa and MasterCard for kicking me off. So I had to, waste all this money in getting Bitcoin back then. And yeah, we have a lot now.
Yeah, no, it's really, and so I think it really proves too is you can have you can have really dramatic changes with crypto. It's of course the U.S. dollar is a huge mark. It's the, I hate to say it, but it is the king currency. But you can have life-changing amounts of capital coming into you through cryptocurrency. So it's really important to consider.
Yeah, and that, ideologically speaking, it seems great for content creators to be able to collect donations from their viewers in, basically a currency that's not as ideologically charged as fiat money, where you're, somewhat backing a government simply by using their money. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the great things about crypto is, and what really will end up being the free market of money is you can talk with your dollar, or rather with your crypto in the sense where we always talk about free markets where you're voting with your dollar by not buying from a particular corporation or the other, where you can actually much more directly vote with your store of value in the free market mm-hmm. of crypto. And I think that's a great way to do that, and a great way for people to keep with their ideology more and more in this space, which I think is great. Again, it's not all about ideology. We want cryptocurrency to appeal to everybody. It's not, the right wing or the left wing or the whatever dollar. It's for everyone. But at the same time, it naturally will appeal to people who are less trusting of centralized authorities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another just big thing too about the payability of crypto is, even though right now I think a lot of the focus is on kind of these politically charged institutions, one of the things I'm really looking forward to is the fact that crypto is an international money. And so to me, I'd be very excited if BitBacker can start to foster kind of an international transfer of money to creators in different countries, instead of really just being trapped into supporting creators or artists in the US or US friendly places. In particular, one of the really great users on BitBacker right now is, she goes by Sexy Cyborg, and she's out of Shenzhen. And so it's just fantastic to see kind of Americans being able to send money to into China, and it's just very, very exciting for me.
That is an excellent point, because with BitBacker or some of that crypto, it doesn't really matter where they are. They don't even need to give any of their real information or names, but you can still send money to them, where with something like Patreon or even PayPal, you have to know who the person is that you're sending money to, and PayPal has to know them, and Visa and MasterCard have to know them. Yeah. And it's excellent that we can just cut out all of that unnecessary overhead.
Yeah. And all you need to start receiving money is just an email address. And you can, so a lot of these kind of pseudonymous bloggers who perhaps don't want to know, maybe they don't want the world to know exactly who they are. Maybe Satoshi himself, for example, even if they're not, they just prefer a certain amount of anonymity. You can start off receiving money just with an email address and your pseudonym. You can also, we've also created an ability to donate through the Power Chats, these kind of one-off payments without even having to sign up for an account. So we've really tried to make it very easy to transfer money to people by collecting the minimal amount of information.
Yeah, that is excellent. I do see a lot of anonymous Power Chats on your site, and I love how that is right now. Well, one of the ones I go to a lot is, of course, the Crypto Ducks. And you see a lot of anonymous donations to that one.
They're great.
Just because all you have to do is chat and send it. There's no account needed. And that's just the joy and simplicity of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And the thing too, this is kind of a more general point too that I just wanted to address too, is the ability to tag a message with your donation or get some sort of recognition is kind of easy to overlook, especially for the more engineering mindset. Like, that I've actually held myself at times, I must confess. But, there's a lot of pushback with why do you need kind of, a BitBacker or a Patreon type of system? Just send it to their public key. And at core, that's essentially right. And that's kind of, we try to keep as much of that as possible. But just to give an example, Naomi Brockwell, who's just been amazing on our site. She had her Bitcoin public key up for years on her addresses, and she would receive a donation every once in a while. But within a month of being on BitBacker, she had received more money in Bitcoin donations than she had over the course of years. And so it's a small change of just being able to say, I sent that, or getting a little bit of recognition that really changes the behavior of people. Sending it into kind of just this empty black hole of a Bitcoin address with just maybe a TX ID for confirmation, and not even the chance for the creator to say thank you, really isn't as appealing as people would hope it would be.
That reminds me a lot of when I talked to IOZetta last week. The physical feedback of sending crypto, like one of the uses for their IOZetta devices that they had was basically a tip jar, a fountain, where when people would send in tips, the fountain would turn on. So you would get feedback that you don't get from pushing a button on your phone. Like when I give you $1, there's feedback there. Or when I give you something physical, but with cryptocurrency, we kind of have to build that feedback on top of itself. And that actually ties in a lot with, I'm going to go a little bit off topic philosophical here. I was just listening to somebody, can't remember her name, but a professor somewhere talk about a happiness study. And they did a lot of studies where they were trying to get people on the subways to talk to each other and then do some self-reporting on how they felt the rest of the day and so on and so forth. And basically universally around the board, when you have personal interaction, you feel better. When you interact with somebody else, you feel better. And in our world, our technical world, everything separates us from other people. So all the apps on your phone are basically designed to remove as many other people from the process as possible. And that's good, from a lot of perspectives. It makes the process more efficient. It makes it easier. Like, their example was Uber versus a taxi. If you needed to arrange a taxi, you had to call somebody, tell them where you were going, wait, talk to your taxi driver, et cetera, et cetera. Where with Uber, you push a button on your phone and you never even have to say a word to your Uber driver if you really don't want to.
Interesting.
And so by removing all those involuntary personal interactions, replacing them with what is more efficient, you have to more intentionally maintain interactions with other people. And so that's one of the great things about a site like BitBacker that allows me to tie in this other things, like you said, this message to me sending somebody funds.
Yeah, and I really like that way that you're putting it. It really makes a lot of sense. I hadn't really thought about it before, but yeah, to a certain extent, Bitcoin is almost abstracted away every single unessential piece of the transaction. And now we're kind of seeing, okay, well, we may not strictly need it, but it would be nice to have some of these things, and we're kind of trying to build them back up. Of course, on the second layer, not on the first layer. But yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's a requirement that I interact with you, because I can still send no message and do a power chat if I wanted to, but it gives the opportunity.
We also leave the public key of the user on their profile. So if you really don't want to, if you really want to cut us out, we're not stopping you at all. You're welcome to send these kind of anonymous into the void type of transactions too. But it seems that people really just appreciate that little extra sense of humanity.
Well, when you get right down to it, that's what it is about. And I'm a capitalist. I'm a free market. I'm not against giant faceless corporations, whatever. But when the giant faceless corporations keep taking a larger and larger bite out of all of my interactions, my free market interactions, I start to look for alternatives. And that's what crypto gives us. But basically me sending you a Visa order is no more personal than me sending you a Bitcoin transaction. So where's the advantage there? And that's an excellent thing, rehumanizing the crypto space. I don't know. Maybe we could start a campaign on that. I say as I rarely leave my home because I work out of my home now, and most of my interaction is with people under the age of 5. But yeah, we're about to the 25-minute, half-hour mark here. So I guess what I'd like to do is give you the opportunity to tell people where to find you, how to get to BitBacker, and basically anything else that you have a dying need to say to the cryptoverse.
Well, yeah, I think you asked a lot of great questions, and I think we covered all the major points that I can think of. But if you want to come check us out, we're at bitbacker.io. And you can also find us on Twitter, bitbacker_IO. And we look forward to seeing you on there.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Jonathan. And it was great as always. And we hope we get a few more people signing up and using BitBacker. You have an excellent day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.